we're not into pop music or the popular music. We're not into classic rock. We're not into regular rock and roll or metal or Metallica for that matter. We're into something completely different. And what we were listening to was a lot of music that came out of where we were living. Out of the city, out of Long Island or New York City, and even out of L.A. or San Francisco, and it was a whole different thing, and it's what brought my group of young guys together, or young people together, was the love of this music. There was a lot of doo-wop, a lot of Motown for my dad, and then my mom was much more into classic rock, some classic rock, a lot of Eagles, and a lot of Doobie Brothers, Eagles, and then some Spanish music too, like Gypsy Kings were ruled the roost for sure. Yeah, I think she was really into American music as a whole, just coming from that country to here. Especially, she was really into a lot of California bands. I think that the whole Laurel Canyon thing certainly, I think, resonated with my mom, who's not a hippie by any means, but she definitely was into that kind of groove. And then there was the Hispanic or Spanish influence, not Central American per se, but popular Spanish music either from Spain or from Argentina. At that age, like 17 or 18, or at that time, it was a lot of punk rock and hardcore music, like New York City hardcore music and punk music. That was I would say probably 90% of what we listened to. There was no Beatles or anything like that. There wasn't any classic rock. It was all New York City punk music, West Coast California punk music, and New York City hardcore. That was really it. Pennywise was big in our group. Dropkick Murphys, when they first sort of came out with the original singer, not what kind of before they were this Irish bagpipe kind of Boston band. They were just another punk rock band from Boston, and in the late 90s or late-ish 90s, they had a completely different lineup, and they were big in our group. Some of the bigger bands, I guess, that you'd know, Rancid was big. NoFX was a large band. Bouncing Souls was one of our local, even though they're from Jersey, they were on heavy rotation for sure. And that's really on the punk rock side. And the hardcore side, there was a really huge scene in New York. Not to get too crazy into that, but Madball, H2O, Youth of Today, Warzone. It's funny when you talk about it now, because it's such a niche genre, really, and most people who are audiophiles or really into music have absolutely zero clue what I'm talking about right now. It's probably my friend Mike. He introduced me to punk music, really. I can recall the day when him and another friend came into a room, and I forgot what album it exactly was, but we were in my buddy's house, and they brought this CD in, or a tape, I don't even remember, and they put it on, and they said that they've been listening to it all day, and they put it on, and it just blew my mind. It was different. It was I forgot what the band was at the time, but it was so raw. It was just different. Like you haven't, as a youth, you didn't hear anything like it. There was nothing like it. There was nothing played like it on the radio. I wasn't into the status quo of music at the time. I really didn't identify with metal bands. I wasn't really into classic rock. I really wasn't into classic rock at the time. What I grew up listening to was didn't really have a lot to do with any of that, and there was a certain, I think, honesty at least in a lot of, punk music, hardcore music. It's really raw, and at times it's very simple, and but I think the honesty in it was the big difference for me. It's you listen to a lot of bands, especially when you're young, and you just don't understand what the heck they're saying in some sort of prose and soliloquy or whatever. But punk was just very in your face. This is a horrible question for me.
Okay.
If you ask me Beatles or Stones, I'd rather tell you Bowie than either of them. That's more up my alley than either of them. I am not a Stones fan in the least. I'll tell you that. I think that a lot of bands did this, but I think that they're an excellent band. They wrote great songs, but they also completely ripped off, most black music, which many bands did. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But Mick Jagger was trying to be James Brown, and their music was just very like many other bands, though, it was very heavily influenced by a lot of blues and jazz and music that other people kind of made up. So I don't think that they're as original or as great as other people might think. Now, obviously, I know that they're the Stones. I'm not trying to downplay them. They're just not my band. It's okay. I'm trying to think of what's the best concert. What are the best concert? I saw, my wife and I, we saw the Killers at Madison Square Garden, which I know is a band that people probably think is very milquetoast to them, which is actually one of my favorite bands. But they were incredible. It was one of the best concerts I think I've actually ever been to. Concerts, all in all, music, venue, location, atmosphere. It was pretty great. I know for me, I talk a lot about punk and hardcore music, but my favorite band actually is the Killers. And I know that they're a mainstream-ish popular band or whatever, but I think that they blend so many genres incredibly together, and their music is much more nuanced than I think people may even give them credit for. The songwriting, the style of the music, it's to me they're a very underrated band, but I think to other people they're just known for Mr. Brightside, and they think that's that band. The real estate agent told us that it was owned by a famous musician from a band called Brand New. I guess you'd call them an emo band. I don't want to sell anyone. I don't want to paint them into a corner, for sure. But they were a very popular band, are a very popular band from Long Island. And as far as what I found out is that they've toured a lot and they toured all over the world, and they've sold out a lot of arenas. But it's interesting whenever you tell someone who had owned this house beforehand, sometimes people are absolutely fanatical about that band, and I've nearly been accosted, and people have asked me many times to come over to the house and look at the house and where it is and how do I know this person, or it's kind of odd and awkward at times. Yeah, I think I'm a fan of music, period. So regardless of what I think about certain bands or whatever, I listen to a little bit of everything. And I don't think a day goes by when I'm not listening to something different or something new or some other genre, whether it's music from all over the world, really. Bands I've never listened to, styles I don't normally listen to. It rules my day, and I think someone who spends a lot of time on the on the road or in the car or by themselves. For someone like that, someone like me, it really defines my day many times. You know, picking what I'm going to listen to in the morning, in the afternoon, when I go to bed. It's all day. Music is just it's always been a major part of my life, and I'm someone who weekly on Fridays when new music comes out, I'm trolling through the genres to see what came out that week. And I always thought at some point in my life that would kind of subside a little bit, but still to this day, it doesn't matter what it is. I'm always looking for new music, always looking for something different, for something to play. So it's a huge massive part of my life. That and my friends and I were so into it that back in the mid '90s to late '90s, we started like an old school fanzine, like interviewing bands, getting ads and reviewing cassettes and CDs and stuff, and we had our own music, punk rock and hardcore, like a magazine. And that's what there was a time where I thought that that's what I was going to do with my life. I thought that I would be an editor for some sort of music magazine, and that would be it. Unfortunately, the guy actually, it's just kind of a tragic story, but it ended kind of abruptly because my friend Mike had passed away in a bad car accident, and the guys, still my friends to this day, who we were doing this with, we all decided to just kind of end it. And it was just starting itself to take off. We had paid advertisements, and it was pretty neat. You know, for years at my parents' house, it was kind of funny, but I would get these CDs to my parents' house for years and years and years on end. These record companies would send me CDs at the time, and for a long time I would just. It was great. We had access to almost everything. I mean, there wasn't a concert in the city, in New York City, that we couldn't basically just get into at, I wouldn't say a moment's notice, but with pretty little notice. At the time, we had really built it up to be this neat little thing that started off like in our bedrooms, basically. That was probably something that people I don't think really know about me, for sure.
Okay. Whether you like it or not, you are one of the few people that anybody knows that actually is building the fucking wall. It's something that everybody knows about. What music did you listen to? Is there a band that you would listen to? Building the Great Wall of America, doing God's work.
It's interesting. I really got into some, and I have to think of some of the bands, but I really got into some of the local Mexican music, South Texas music. There's a lot. The guys are constantly playing music, and I think when you're kind of overruled by the group that you're working with, you just start listening to their music. So there's a lot of I guess mariachi type inspired music from Mexico. There's definitely a lot of that going around. And I'm not too familiar with what they call the different genres that they have, but it's pretty neat though.